Hello and welcome to Raw Podcast this week. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by a bit of a mystery man, a bit of a maverick in the boxing world, Mr. MAMS TAYLOR. Thank you for joining me. How are you, first of all?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I do feel like in this mad world of boxing, you are the one that kind of creeps a bit of mystery. I know you've kind of had a whole life of a world outside boxing with music, etc. But yeah, there's an air of mystery about you. Is that a fair comment to make, Mams?
I don't know. I'm an open book, Kugan. Maybe so. I mean, it's look. I appreciate every second of my life because of the things that I've been through, and people have asked, let's write a book. I've had agencies come, let's do a movie, and the thing about it is it's just too unrealistic. It goes from here to here to there, and it's even gotten, it's been at the point where if you asked me 5 years ago, you'd be doing this, I'd be shocked. So, there's been a lot of twists and turns, but I think for me, the key is just full gratitude for everything and trying not to take anything for granted,
That's a good kind of mindset to have, but you have to have that kind of mindset to do the kind of things that you've done and are doing.
You're either a winner or a victim, and a winner doesn't win every battle. You lose most of your battles, but you keep going until you get the win. And I think there's two things for me, is like eternal optimism, no matter what. So I'm like, the shittest situation comes up. Of course, I get pissed off, I get angry, I get upset, but I bounce back very quickly and I become optimistic about, okay, how can I make this work? How can I make this a win? And then discipline is the other one. You just keep moving forward. So I think if you have that kind of mindset, it's difficult not to enjoy and appreciate life, and the things you do. And with that mindset, you're going to gravitate towards, and things are going to gravitate towards you that are going to ultimately bring you enjoyment and things that you appreciate doing. So I, as with an Iranian background, my dad, very strict guy when I was growing up, wanted the best for me to study and be a lawyer. Obviously, when you're Iranian or Indian, or
my dad wanted me to be a lawyer as well. Lawyer. I did law at A level as well.
Yeah, I did law A level. I did well.
Here in Stevenson.
I can't remember that.
Remember that? The snail in the ginger beer can. The first thing you taught at law. The first thing I was taught at law was the case of the snail and the ginger beer can.
What happened with the snail and the ginger beer can?
Here in Stevenson, you should know this. Anyone who's done anything to do with law, this is like the first thing he's taught, but it was taught to me like 25 years ago. So it was a famous case about a snail in a ginger beer can.
Really? Yeah. I'm going to look that up after this, yeah? It sounds interesting, actually.
Absolutely. But for yourself, Mams, Cricklewood, you were born, say 70s, it would have been late 70s, kind of into the 80s. What was that like for you growing up around that part of London?
It was great. I mean, it was great in terms of the experiences it provided, but definitely colourful. There was a lot of, I witnessed a lot of crazy things. I saw a neighbour getting stabbed in the head by his wife when I was like 4. And I remember that still to this day, 4 years old, very vividly. His wife caught him with his pants down with his girlfriend, and his name was Sam, right? Don't know his last name or anything. And they were chasing him around the car, the whole family. It was like Benny Hill. But they caught him, and then the wife just put the knife through his head. And I don't know, that pops out. It was very, I'm glad I experienced all of that because I got in with quite a rough crowd. I'd get into fights all the time. I'd get beat up all the time as a kid, trying to go to the store and rent a video out, and there was no, and shout out to Bakul, the video the guy who used to rent out, you know, it was before Blockbuster and all of that, before DVDs, obviously. He'd give me whatever I wanted. I'd have all the 18s and Terminator or whatever, you know, Scarface. I just rent it out and watch it. But I was obsessed with watching the Hong Kong cinema, like the kung fu movies and all that. So I'd watch every one of them. Like, you remember the time we'd have to rewind the video, or you have to pay £2 extra?
Maybe there's going to be a generation of people listening to us and going, what on earth are they talking about? VHS, obviously. Before even there was a Blockbuster, we had a video shop in Essex where we'd go there on a Friday night and you'd rent the video, £2.50 or £3 or whatever, and then the next day you'd have to come and drop it through a box. But this was like a shop we had, but there were people, like you said, that used to come to your house and kind of have those videos there.
Yeah, in the back of the trunk, the boot.
Yeah.
I've been in America too long. But yeah, they'd come in with that, and my brother is 10 years older than me, and I looked up to him so much, and he was just a bad boy, like always getting into fights, beat up one of my bullies. So I took on anything that he was like into, you know. But he had all the schemes and things going on, and there was one guy who became friends with my brother, and he spoke to. So I wanted to be friends with this guy, and he would bring me a stolen bicycle, my BMX, yellow and blue. I learned how to do the bunny hops and wheelies, and him and I would go. And because I was little, I was only like 6 years old. He'd take me and sneak me through windows and say, "Oh, get this for me," and I just wanted to impress him. So like, there was stuff I was doing there that was it was different, and it was rough in its own way when you look back, like different rough. There wasn't like acid being poured on people's faces and all that stuff. It was just, but yeah, it was you always get into fist fights and stuff like that, you know. So I think it was it made me tougher.
So back then, obviously, through the 80s, it's kind of into the 90s, where was the first kind of breakthrough for you in terms of music?
I wouldn't call... Well, I used to DJ. I DJ'd Emporium, Mycenae. Do you remember those?
I remember Emporium, yeah. There's not a massive age gap between me and you, actually, so I do recollect a lot of this stuff.
3 years older than you. But yeah, no, I was DJing and really loved music and got into it. But what happened was the breakthrough really, I'd say it came from, when I did my own music, I was in LA at this point, and I was already a very successful businessman, so I'd succeeded in business. And then started representing big producers and this and that and the other, and there was this girl I invested in, and she came to my house. She had a ponytail and tracksuit bottoms and just looked very casual. But she played this song. I was like, that's a fucking hit. And the manager said, look, will you put some money behind her? Like I said, yeah, I'll put £1 million behind her. And signed her and did a deal, got the contract and all of that. And then it turned out to be Lady Gaga. So that was quite a big one.
I knew there was. I was going to ask you about that, but I didn't know that story was going away. So that's how that kind of initially started for Lady Gaga as well.
So yeah, so I was trying to be a rapper, but honestly, the reason I wanted to be a rapper was because I'm a good writer. I've read, because I didn't go to uni, I think I had a complex of like, oh, they'll think I'm thick. So I read everything, and I educated myself a lot. I didn't want to go to university. You know, I did go for a couple of years, and then I dropped out. I ran out of money, to be honest with you, and yeah, so I became quite well read and used an extensive vocabulary. Russell branded it a little bit, you know, and yeah, no, I wanted to be a rapper because I saw that we were all out together in LA, and every time I wanted a bird, Timberlake would get preference, and I was like, you got to be a fucking celeb here, you know. So I wanted to be famous just for the birds, you know. That's the honest truth. I didn't know how to be a rapper. I think I could do this. I can't sing, so let me try and rap. Yeah. So I faked that a little bit, and then I actually inadvertently fell back in love with the process of writing and producing and all of that, and it was great. Started doing, you know, being relatively successful, working with all the big artists, the rappers, some, Robbie Williams, Billy Idol, people, random. And then I saw, like, after about 2-3 years, I saw, like, okay, I'm not going to make it as an artist, but I do love the business and I love the creativity. So that's when I got behind the scenes and said, I'm more of a businessman. Let me see what I can do, BTS, and put these projects together.
I mean, you've worked with literally some of the biggest stars that the world has seen. I'm sure, listen, this is not that long of a pod to kind of go through everyone you've worked with, but just tell us obviously about some of the notable names. You mentioned probably one, if not the biggest star in the world there in Lady Gaga, but you've worked with some very, very notable names, haven't you?
Yeah. All the rappers, Snoop, Game, Lil' Kim, Travis Barker, you name it really. And I think it's all been surreal. And because I was sort of faking it till I made it, I always had that imposter syndrome as well. And I remember being with like a dream girl that I'd watch on TV and just be like, how's this fucking real? Like, what's going on? Like, we're, kissing in a hotel room after an Oscar party and all that stuff. Like, how am I finding myself in this situation? So I think I've been very lucky to have had the experiences I've had, but I'm a firm believer that you make your luck with the optimism and the hard work, the discipline. So yeah, there's lots of people, but I'll tell you this, I'm also not, I think I've only ever been starstruck by one guy, Mike Tyson. That was it. And Michael Jackson, to be fair as well. I very briefly met him at the concert he was doing in Hyde Park. I was a kid. But yeah, Mike Tyson, and yeah, he was my favorite. Like most kids growing up in the 80s, he was my favorite boxer ever,
So when you were growing up and kind of getting onto this music scene, how was your parents' attitude towards what kind of the field that you were kind of going into, so to speak, then? So
I think it's a difficult one, but I think because I was self-sufficient and I was self-made, I was self-made millionaire at 23. So at that point, they couldn't really say much,
They're on board then.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, they just thought I'm like the black sheep, but it's kind of like, oh, it's MAMS. He's just going to do something that's left field and whatever, But yeah, I think on some level there was some. I think my dad, when he saw like I was driving around in the Lambos and the Phantoms and all that, he was like, all right, this is not fucking about, So I think he was proud of that. And my mum was just always more easy. It's always the mum that's a bit more easygoing, But yeah, it's always I've always hopped around from one thing to another, but I do it with full passion. So like, I sold roses when I was like 14 at the traffic light. I worked in an antique shop. I worked in door-to-door sales. I've done all kinds of jobs, but I was always like the top guy at what I was doing because I did it with full enthusiasm. I knew I didn't want to sell flowers forever. I knew I didn't want to be a bouncer forever, but I knew how to earn money and be good at what I was doing. And I think that was the key, because when I was working at the club as a bouncer, we came across some rough customers. I grew up knowing a lot of people as well, so I knew what the landscape was in London, and but because of that, being streetwise and I wouldn't say academic, but well read and self-educated, it gave me a good ability to sort of know what the score is with who and how to move, and so I think I lost my train of thought.
Do you know what? You just reminded me about something else we got in common. I used to sell roses on the weekend, weirdly. Yeah, I used to go up to around the nightclubs. So there's me and two girls. I used to drive, this was when I was about 17, 18, used to drive to places in Colchester, all around kind of Essex, go in there. The girls weren't very good at selling the roses, so I used to, like, where I was a little bit forward when I was at that age, I used to go up and I used to make up a reason why we're selling these roses. So one week it was, this is for saving the whales, and like there's whales that are dying in around the world, and this is to save them. And I used to make up all these different things in order to save these roses. It's terrible, but it was like
It was a long time ago.
yeah, it's like but yeah, it was that was just reminding me of going and doing that every weekend actually.
Yeah, no, I remember, I think it was an act of defiance as well, because I had more creativity and I was kind of artistic. And my old man, I think it was like an act of rebellion to a degree, where I was like, I'm not going to be a lawyer, I'm not going to be a doctor, I'm just not a super academic guy. I was a smart guy, but I didn't love, ironically, I love learning now, but when I was told I have to, I didn't like it very much. So I went out, I'd sell the roses, and that's it. It was all, once you get one sale, you know, and you're on a roll, and you just, it was the same thing. I worked for this company, I can't even remember what they were called, but I was employee of the month for the first 3 months, and I'd sell these packages to get your hair done. So you'd go, you'd obviously find your target audience. You go to this hair salon, and you get a £250 package, but you have to pay £50. So I'd walk around with a credit card machine and poach different people. Look, this is not a scam. And it wasn't a scam. Yeah. It was real. But most people wouldn't use the services within the time frame or whatever. So that, I think, was the scam, if anything. But it wasn't an actual scam. And I just learned how to deal with people, and also working on the door, that was the biggest education, in knowing it's really an energy exchange. And if you can dismantle an energy that's coming at you, because we're all human, right? We all, not to sound soppy, but if you connect on a human level with someone, it takes their guard down, and then you can really connect, And I learned that as well. There were some very, very hairy situations. That door got shot at. I think it got closed down after I'd already left.
Which door were you at? Yeah, what doors were you working on?
Paparazzi Lounge. And it was a great venue. The problem was it was open till 6 a.m. every night. So it started out with a very classy members only, and then by 2 a.m. people from China White and other clubs would start coming
China
in.
White.
Everyone's got the thing in the side of their mouth, coming up to you and fucking the conversations, people coming up and repeating themselves throughout the night, the drunken banter, and the alarm would go off inside, we'd all run out, but we'd have such a laugh at that door as well. Where we'd have, most of the Arabs would come in the summer as well, and they'd always fight in the club, and then after 2 or 3 is when, you get this guy from this firm and that guy from that firm, and so you'd see and were privy to a lot of different situations, and then we got shot at the door. We had to jump down the stairs, literally, on top of each other, piled up, while there were these Russians shooting at the actual door. There were stabbings in there. I think someone died, but I wasn't there at that point. But it was a lot of fun, and it taught you a lot, how to defuse a lot of bombs, essentially.
So for you, from what I learned, obviously back then, the boxing side of it came around 2019, that kind of time? Or was it before then?
No, I actually put on an event with the London Shoot Fighters. We put on our first MMA event in 2005, I think. I'm probably off on the year by a year or two. But we put an event on Lee Murray against Pele, and we had, which was a great fight. Lee won. I think we had Ian Freeman. We had some OG MMA guys on there, and we broke even, which was great for your first ever event. And I had no experience, but I was such an MMA fan, been such a diehard boxing fan since I was a kid, and a martial arts fan, So, and I've done it myself. and I enjoy it. It's something I've been very passionate about. So when I see sometimes people saying like, there's no like they don't know, they're just in it for money. There's a lot easier ways to make money, and we do, yeah. But this is passion based, you know, the Misfits, and so I think on a bigger scale, yes, I started managing KSI around 2018 or 19, and then the first experience was with KSI versus Logan. So I was involved in that, but I was his music manager for the first year or two, and then became his overall manager. Then when we were, you know, just said, look, why don't we put on events rather than you taking boxing matches elsewhere? Let's do our own thing. And then started speaking to Kalle, who I've known since. Me and Kalle used to be on the opposite side of the street fights. So, yeah, me and
Well, actual...
Yeah.
I want to know about this. I really want to know about this.
Yeah. So, Kalle had a mate who I shouldn't say shagged. Can I say that?
Say whatever you want.
I basically... There was a situation with a young lady,
right.
Okay, and turns out she had a boyfriend. The boyfriend came and bottled me in a nightclub, and I didn't know she had a boyfriend, or I didn't know who he was, and he was some drug dealer, low life, like scumbag, you know, and he came and bottled me. I've still got the scar here, yeah, from when I was, I don't know how old, I must have been 17 or something. And then me and this guy had a big feud, so all his mates jumped me, then I jumped him, then I really did some damage to him, and then he went and grassed on me, and I got a charge of like GBH with a fray, and Kalle was mates with him, so there was, whenever we'd see their group, my group would like, you know, so we'd be on opposite sides, but there was some weird undertone of respect between me and Kalle. And Nisse. Nisse was the wild one, though. Kalle was wild, but Nisse had the crazy eyes, you know, like you weren't sure what Nisse was going to do. And yeah, they actually really had reputations like of being nutters as well, you know. And I felt, there was a guy called Tom Hardy, who you guys know, you know Tom Hardy. So in the area where I went to like sixth form college, I was known as one of the tough guys, and he was known as one of the tough guys. Then in the other areas, you know, Highgate and stuff, it was Kalle and Nisse that were like. So that
what sort of year are we talking about here?
All the way from 14 years old. I'm 46 now, so you do the math. But yeah, it was
into the 90s then.
Yeah. So there was always like little feuds and threats of fights happening. Me and Tom Hardy would see each other at the pub, and there was a pool table there. I didn't want to fight him, but I would never let I was faking it because I didn't know if I could fight these guys. But I did beat up people and get lucky in fights that I was in, so I knew how to fight. But this guy was a big guy, and he just looked crazy, and I saw Tom Hardy beat up two people at once, so I was like, all right, let me act tough, but not too tough to piss him off, you know, just tough enough that he also doubts it. So we'd always just look at each other and just go like, and then go, and that's it, you know, we'd walk past, but I think neither of us wanted to fight. And with Kalle, it was the same thing, but we secretly were kind of like, there was a fondness for each other. And then when we got to like 1920, we spoke about the court case. I almost went down for, I got off self-defense. I was defending myself against this guy, and thankfully, I could have got a lot of time for that. Changed my whole life, you know. Kalle and I started talking about it, and he was like, yeah, the guy was in the wrong, to be honest. He shouldn't have taken it this far, this and that. And then we started getting to know each other. Then he'd come, when I'd moved to LA, he'd come out to LA, and we'd always see each other. So when it got to a point of KSI and I talking about doing the boxing, I said, well, look, I'm friends. At this point, I was friends with Kalle, so I'm friends with a guy who really knows his stuff. Let's discuss it with him. Spoke to him, next thing, talking to DAZN, and then, you know, it's become a reality. And we're very ambitious with the things that we've got planned in the future as well. So that's the history behind it.
Do you know what? I'm in a little bit of shock over this story with Kalle and that. So, well, just going back, Mams, was there any kind of actual altercations, like even physical, with Nisse or Kalle at that point?
There was one night when one of my mates punched Nisse, okay? And it was just me and him outside of Stringfellows, okay? And Nisse was like, went for him, and all like 18 mates jumped my mate, and I ran to get the car, and my mate said, "Where you going? You can't." And I go, "I'm getting the car. What's the point of both of us getting smashed out?" So I get the car, and I'm like, I go grab him, and I'm getting punched and kicked in the back of the head a little bit by I don't know who. Take him into the car. He's got all these bumps and bruises, and he's got the hump with me because he thinks I've just left him. I'm like, "Mate, I've rescued you. What do you want me to do?" It's 18 of them, you know. And we got in the car and we drove off. And then there was other times where our friend groups were going to fight, and Kalle and me we determined that it's going to be a peaceful walk away thing. We were like, "Look, Cal, look, this is going to happen. No one's going to win. This one's carrying this one's carrying that. Let's call it a day." But he was always up for it.
This is absolutely insane.
He was always up for it.
This is crazy to know, because I did always wonder, kind of, I didn't know that association. I knew that you guys knew each other, as in you and Kalle, more specifically, but I didn't know actually the backstory of it goes back for years. You're talking probably about nearly 30 odd years.
30 years, yeah, 30 years. I worked at a shop that he used to come shop in. That's how we also became more friendly. So I was in a clothing store called Linear in Hampstead. It's like designer clothes, and I'd be selling the designer clothing. He'd come in, his dad would come in, and his bro as well. And I'd admire, like, they were always with pretty girls as well, and I thought, oh, they're quite cool guys, you know. It's a shame we're not, like, mates are always fighting on the opposite side. So I think, like I say, there was always like an underlying respect and fondness which grew to what it is now. And I'll say this, we butt heads a lot. We butt heads all the time. But most loyal, anything goes wrong, he's never like, "This is your fault." It's like, we're at the weddings together, we're at the funerals together, you know? So him and Nisse got my perpetual respect always.
Mams, just to kind of close into the last chapter of this, I mean, when this influencer boxing kind of came prominent, and it was good yesterday at the awards that KSI paid respect to Joe Weller as kind of the first kind of start on this, and it was good. I remember that time. We weren't really kind of invested in that Weller fight and didn't get really involved in it from our perspective until 2019 in LA. But it's had a lot of kind of, say, criticism. Back then it did more so, I think, where the shows were being combined with the influencers as such, with, like you talk about that card in LA had KSI and Logan, but also featured Devin Haney and Billy Joe Saunders, and it was separating. That was always the gripe of people, about separating kind of influencer boxing with the other boxing, which Misfits has answered to a T, haven't you? You've done that. You've kind of eliminated, this is our thing, we're in our lane, watch it or don't watch it.
Well, yes and no, but that's the thing. We did separate it. Misfits is crossover boxing, essentially, Misfits boxing. But people would still complain. People would still poo-poo it, you know. So no matter what you do, even though we take the most stringent, we make the most effort out of anyone to make sure the safety is there. We do the testing on everything. We do the medicals that we have. Even when it's not required, we always go the extra mile. And, you know, we are very careful, and we move with passion, but also to try and, it's an entertainment product, but we've also started moving into the pro product. which is traditional. We will continue with the crossover boxing. There's clearly a big market for that, and it's ever expanding into footballers and rappers and tennis players and all kinds of stuff. And it's interesting, you know, and there's storylines, and I can be a bit WWE with planting seeds. Now, nothing's scripted, but I know how to shit stir a little bit, you know, when I need to. And then the pro stuff, we want to keep it traditional, but there's a couple of angles that we're going to announce later this year that's going to get everyone's attention as well. You know, we're signing some big pros, and then the MMA as well. So it's going to be Misfits House of Combat, essentially. And we will keep it separate so that there's less confusion. Because I signed some top prospects, and you see in the comments, why you signed to Misfits? But I think maybe it's our fault we haven't made the messaging clear that MF Pro is going to be very, very much traditional world titles and, you know, Olympians and that kind of thing, and building their records until, you know, they get to their world title challenges and hopefully win some. And then with Misfits Boxing, we carry on with the crossover stuff, and then Misfits MMA is going to be very top standard of MMA fighters.
Ma'am, if you're being subjective, what do you think as a fan, as a viewer, as a consumer, what do you think their issues are specifically? Because I see kind of both sides of it. I see IFL's obviously has a lot of kind of hardcore boxing, a base from years ago that we post stuff up and we kind of get the comments, etc., etc. But if you're looking at it subjectively, what do you think the real issue is with it? Because ultimately, if you don't want to watch something, don't watch it. But they don't like to be told that, and they think that's a bit patronising to be said, well, don't watch it then. They think that's a cop-out of an answer. But
is it? Because look...
But I don't think it is. I think if you don't want to watch something, don't watch it.
That's how I look at it. Like, look, if there's some material out there that's offensive, yeah? Like, you know, there was a show... showing kids, there was something that was a bit sexualizing of children. I'm fucking tear them down. That's disgusting. It shouldn't be on TV. I'm with you on that. That's a terrible thing. But if it's if they do like badminton championships and they say, all right, we're going to make this fun and do it in fancy dress and wear costumes, and this one's a squid and this one's a fucking lamb, I just probably won't be interested and won't watch it. So I don't want to watch badminton in the first place. But if I was a badminton fan and they want to do fancy dress badminton, just be like, if I was a purist badminton guy, maybe I wouldn't want to see a squid against a lamb, and I'd be like, this isn't for me. Good luck to you. That's it. So if I don't watch something, there's loads of shows on. You can watch the ones you like. Don't tune into the ones you don't. But people enjoy watching something, say, look how shit this guy is. This guy's shit. What's he doing? What are they doing? Why is X
Factor, isn't it? You know, the initial auditions of people that come on.
That's the fun part.
Yeah, that's the best bits.
Okay, but let's be honest. Some of our guys have grown. They've gotten better. And isn't that fucking lovely that you've seen the journey of, like, say, Gibb, you know, Slim, Dean the Great. These guys, they've gotten better and better. Now, the lines become blurred because they like to troll and say to Devin Haney, look, Dean will say, come on, let's have it, you know. But the reality is we know where we are with the crossover boxers. I don't actually understand what the problem is. So you tell me as like, I'd consider myself a purist also, you know, coming into this. And it's not because money, they're just in it for the money. There's other things we do that make a lot more money and a lot less stress. But why are we doing this? Because we love it, and it's a different world we're creating. And the influence we're having, I promise you, there's way more boxing fans, there's way more kids out there that know who Canelo is today because of our product. Believe it or not.
Because Jake Paul's mentioned him as well.
That too.
That's had a lot to do with kind of, there'd be a market out there of kind of people that follow people on Misfits KSI, Jake Paul, because his name's been mentioned by Jake Paul, that would have a massive effect. It would, yeah.
Yeah, someone like Chavez, I'm a big fan. I loved when he fought that Sergio Martinez. What a fight, you know, at that time. Great fight. They were undefeated. I think that maybe there was one loss. But Sergio Martinez was the champ. What a fight, especially the last round. I knew who he was. Do you think any of the KSI and Jake Paul fans knew who he was before he was? And no disrespect to him, he's a legend. You know, he's son of a legend. He's great. But that's what it does. It brings the attention to, okay, I really like this. What else can I watch? Oh, now it's all a bit intertwined as well. Turkey doing what he's doing. It's very interesting, these super fights. They're going to watch that too, and they want to sound educated when they're on Twitter arguing with each other. They want to know a bit what they're talking about, so they do their research, they watch the fights. Where's the downside? All I've had is parents telling me, my kid has lost 100 pounds in weight. He's gone to the gym, he wants to be a Misfits boxer. Ask the gyms how many kids there are in there trying to be in Misfits. I think it's a very positive thing.
I know the answer to what I'm going to ask you, but I want you to answer this. So there is, and I look at all the kind of counters from the anti-influencer people, right? So let's make up someone's name. Joe Bloggs. Joe Bloggs has been fighting all his life, yeah? Trained since he was a kid, has gone through kind of the system, schoolboys, done everything, turned professional. Joe Bloggs is now mid-20s to 30s. Joe Bloggs hasn't fought for a British title yet, let's just say, for example. Joe Bloggs has effectively spent 15 years of his life dedicating it to the sport he loves and has never had the profile or never had the money compared to some of the people that have featured on your shows. I know the answer to this because when you break it down, which I know you're going to, it's quite simplistic in terms of commercial, etc., but that is a thing that comes up.
Maybe I'll surprise you with this answer because, yes, there is the obvious answer, which I'll get to, but in boxing and in MMA, now, if you want to make proper money and you're going to go down the traditional route, Americanisms, you want to go down the traditional route, you still have to be a fucking great entertainer. It's very hard to make Mayweather money and McGregor money, two of the biggest pay-per-view sellers ever. They are. If you look at the top 10 pay-per-views, it's McGregor and Mayweather are all over that list. Yeah, why? Because they were polarizing figures, you know, and they basically, you want to see them lose, or you love them and you want to see them win, and there's passion there. So it's the same thing with what we do, except our guys are established and have a fan base of their own already. So a lot of them don't need to box. They're not boxing for the money, a lot of our guys, because they make their money from YouTube, from Snapchat, from whatever area that they're in, from football, from rapping, from selling, DJing, whatever they're doing. They're making a living. So a lot of them, I give them kudos because they're like, as a man, I want to test my mettle and see what I'm like in there, and also get paid for it. Sure, there is a bit of that resentment from someone who's gone the traditional route, done everything he's supposed to do to get there, but he doesn't have the same paycheck. I get that, but I say, it's a tough one, but these guys have also earned the right with their content. Like KSI, how many years has he spent, how many hours has he spent honing in on his craft, getting better as a musician, getting better as a content creator, as a YouTuber, to make millions and millions doing what he's doing and have such a massive audience that's captivated by the moves he makes. So he's bringing positivity to boxing in that sense, and Jake Paul too, to a degree. I wasn't a fan of the Mike Tyson thing. I wasn't at all. I thought that's just one step too far. But being a massive Tyson fan, but overall, these guys are bringing eyeballs to the sport, and we brought KSI and Jake brought the eyeballs, and we're like, we really, really made a difference in boxing and the attention. Boxing was. And this is, you guys have reported this, loads of people have reported this, it was seen as a dying sport. Yeah, the attention was going, people weren't interested, the numbers were bad. We came along and said, watch what we'll do for boxing. And we did, and then Turkey came and said, hold my non-alcoholic beer, So all credit to him, but I think we've been a part of that process as well. and we've motivated people. So I think it's positivity, and if you're someone who's a purist that just wants to watch traditional boxing, watch that. We're not trying to get on, we're staying in our lane with Misfits boxing, and then the pro stuff you're going to enjoy as well, because that's going to be very traditional.
Yeah, I mean, just to finish up on that, I mean, look, I know loads of boxers that have kind of gone through that whole system, and they've never really kind of had their break in terms of financial or even exposure. Some have, some haven't. But that's not a reason to sort of say, well, I've done it, that shouldn't be happening because it didn't happen for me. It's not an argument. Life doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
So if you go to business school, yeah, you go get your degree, you get your master's, and you get a PhD, yeah, you've gone through the scholastic system, education to the highest level. You go work at a firm, you work your way up, and you're still not, and then there's a guy who comes along who's a maverick and does his thing and he's a millionaire at 23. That guy's going to think I'm a cunt, yeah? But am I? It wasn't for me, so I found my own path. I didn't do it to piss him off.
No, yes, right.
I just wanted to, I've got my goal, and this is my goal. I'm a goal-oriented person, so I've done what I needed to do. And I think that's the way it works. So if a lot of people do have a sheep mentality, whether it's fair or not, I work sometimes 18-hour days. I haven't had a holiday in 16 years. I travel for work. And I love it. That is my holiday, is work. I love it. And riding my horses, doing that stuff. I love my life. But there's people who are like slaves to the system. But that's a choice that they've made, And that's a whole other topic. But that's what the powers that be want us to do, is to stay in our lane in the system. And that's it. So if you don't want to, you don't have to. There are ways around it. You're a traditional boxer. Amateurs right now, go make your YouTube channel, go make your TikToks, be interesting.
Push yourself. We're in a world now where we can promote ourselves, which is what the majority of the people that fight on your platform have done. They've promoted themselves.
Ryan Garcia too. Like, how did he come up?
Massive following before people knew who Ryan Garcia was in boxing.
Exactly. So if you're going to rely on your talent only, my daughter, she's an incredible singer-songwriter, truly, truly, not just saying that. She's very talented, but she knows, and I've told her, I'm like, I'm not giving you a shortcut. She has to work. When she stays with me in Nashville, she has to work 9 to 5, 5 days a week, sometimes longer, just to get studio time. I said, look, I know I've got connections, but until you're ready and you've earned it, because if you get this on a plate now, on a platter, silver platter, you get it, you're not going to be fulfilled and satisfied with it, because you've got to go through the suffering and hard work to get what you've got. It's not that I'm being a bastard or I'm being tight or anything. It's that I want her. I know when I had it quick and easy, I lost it all. I lost everything I ever owned and went from a 18,000 square foot mansion in Beverly Hills to a flat share in Venice with 5 other people, smelling their fucking shit from across the hall. And came back. But I appreciate it 1,000 times more this time around, because I didn't get super lucky. I had to really work for it. And I think whatever you're doing, work hard and work smart. Don't complain.
Well, listen, Mams, I much appreciate it. And also, I've got to say, the heating that we required is over there. I noticed that halfway through. I was like, it is very cold here. But listen, I much appreciate your time. I found this very fascinating, because there's a lot of stuff there I didn't know. I found this stuff with Kalle Nisse, who I've known for like nearly 14 years myself. I didn't know all that stuff, so it's been very educational. I'm sure people will find a lot of this backstory very interesting. So I do appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man, so
Likewise.
Much appreciate your time.
Always a fan of you guys. Thank you.
Kugan Cassius here on Raw Podcast with MAMS TAYLOR. Make sure you comment, like and subscribe, and we will see you and you will hear us next week. Thank you very much. We're out.